I was so inspired by what you all have been doing with Jill and Paul and Jordan that I thought, what can art history contribute to this question of environmental change? Fantastic, thank you. And the history of industrialization and of planetary change. So that is what this next year's seminar will deal with, landscape, art, and ecology. I was thinking particularly of this picture, which is a small picture, and it's very interesting. This picture is not in an art gallery because it was considered too ugly to be bought by an art gallery, and it was bought by the Science Museum in London, where it hangs in a case with lots of bits of metal that were made in this factory. This is, in fact, the first factory, the first one in the world. This is the Colebrookdale Iron Works, founded in the 18th century by a group of Quaker industrialists to make machines. And it was the first factory that made machines in the world. And it's very interesting that nobody really twigged how significant this was as a historical development, except this artist, Jacques de Loutherbourg, who saw this thing. And if effectively, although he didn't have the words for it, clearly he saw the Industrial Revolution. You can see the revolution, you can see the fires of hell, but you can also see the power of the changes. It's almost as if planetary change was visible to artists before it was visible to scientists or to anyone just living in the world. And the person that will be the kind of patron saint of this class, although he's a slightly dodgy figure in his personal life, but we won't go there, is John Ruskin. John Ruskin looked at the sky. He looked at the sky in the mid to the late 19th century, and he saw what he called the storm cloud of the 19th century. And he said, these clouds are not normal. This is a manufacturer's mist. And then he said, it's made of dead men's souls. And of course, everyone said he was mad. We're making loads of money out of this. Fantastic. You can make more textiles in an hour than you used to be able to make in a year. This is amazing. We're rich. England is the center of the empire and the world. And Ruskin noticed, by looking at the environment with an artist's eye, that things were not right. That plants were dying, that water was being, he sensed even the acidity in the water, really interestingly, by watching the way that the plants around the streams in the Lake District started to die. And that's because Manchester is just down the road. And he figured out acid rain long before that was a concept in scientific analysis. So this is the question. And actually it brings us right to the present day and to what some of you were doing with Jill by walking outside and looking. Is what is it that we can see visually, looking at art, but also looking at nature in the way that artists have looked at it, that might offer both analysis, but also possibly solutions to some of the global problems of the Anthropocene. I like to think this is the first painting of the Anthropocene. People always say around 1800, is when the Anthropocene might be, when planetary damage caused by humans becomes irreversible. This painting was painted in 1801. So this guy was really on the money. He was like the first day of the Anthropocene, and he was there to register it. There's also interesting, and I want to link in this course, I want to get everyone thinking about the fact that this is not a national problem. This is not a regional problem. This is a global problem. So the same artists who were watching, on the one hand, the beautiful rainbow and the beautiful natural landscape, and on the left-hand side, here's the industry. It was the same artist, this is William Hodges, who actually were also interested in empire. And so empire and industry come together. So you can't think about industrialization, the Anthropocene, and pollution in one place. It's everywhere. It's already global by this time. So the same guy, William Hodges, is there in Yorkshire. Actually, I was born just there. So I always use this slide. But he also went to India with the East India Company and painted landscapes there. And he went on Captain Cook's first voyage of so-called discovery to Tahiti and to New Zealand and to Australia, which they called Terra Nullius because there's nobody there. So they claimed it for the British Empire, but of course there were people there, and that's a problem. In fact, of course, New Zealand and Australia are some of the places where climate change has had the most disastrous effects on the environment. And so this is, again, a founding moment of that. And it's all there in the visual record in these paintings. And actually, even a painter like John Constable, who's celebrating London as the heart of empire. If you look at this beautiful image, it's the opening of the new bridge, Waterloo Bridge. We just beat the French. We're going to have a bridge to commemorate it. But then if you look a bit closer, here's the empire, that's fine. Look across the river and see what's going on, and imagine what life was like for the people down here. So these are the kind of questions. Go to a Caribbean plantation and think about how slavery fits into this picture of environmental desecration and also in human rights violation, and how actually the ecology of the Caribbean was disastrously affected by the plantations growing sugar. All sorts of different visual ways of looking at that. And then finally, we can think about this area. Think about the Northern America and what became, during the period we're looking at, the United States. And think about the vision of nature, which is so important to American culture. But it's important to the culture of the young United States precisely because it's just being wiped out at exactly this moment, in just the same way that the indigenous cultures of the Northeast, you can see this tiny figure of a Native American that Thomas Cole puts into this landscape. This was an area which had been effectively stolen from Native Americans in the preceding 50 to 100 years. We can think about this myth of nature as a product of Anthropocene changes. This is my favorite picture for that. It's one of the most beautiful paintings ever made, and I will tell you one thing about it, which is a guy brought it to Yale in the back of his station wagon in 1950 and offered it to the Yale Art Gallery for cash. And the director said, "Get that garbage out of here, it's kitsch." It is not kitsch, it's one of the great works of American art. The guy went on driving and eventually got to Cleveland and they bought it. So it's now in Cleveland Art Gallery. This is called Twilight in the Wilderness. Okay, so this is the perfect image of tranquil America. This is like the exquisite, the religious, the divine, except it was painted in 1860 and all hell was about to break loose in America because of slavery. Second, this might have been painted in New Hampshire, but this was painted out of a window in New York City. And this is industrial carbon. This is actually what Frederick Church saw out of his studio on 10th Street in New York City. So wherever you go, the Anthropocene pollution, it's actually there, even if you're not immediately sure of it. Fast forward, and I'm nearly done, to contemporary art. And now environmental looking and thinking is an absolutely essential part of the practice of many, if not most, contemporary artists. So we can use these wonderful contemporary photographs, Jeff Wall here, the Canadian photographer, Sudden Gust of Wind, and also, just to conclude, land art. Some of the most fascinating works of art of the last 50 years involve actually reshaping the landscape and thinking about environmental change, but not in ways that the artist could always predict. For example, Robert Smithson created the great spiral jetty, which is supposed to be a stone jetty in the water of the Great Salt Lake, which disappears under the water as the water rises and then reveals itself as the water falls. But there is no water left. So all you have is the salt. Now, Robert Smithson had no idea in 1968, I don't know what happened there, no idea in 1968 that was going to happen at all. So this is the Anthropocene actually exceeding what a contemporary artist imagined could ever happen almost in his own lifetime, certainly in our lifetimes. So those are some of the big questions we'll talk about. We'll read texts from the 19th century and the 20th century, but the main thing is learning to look at works of art, not thinking about brushwork and thinking about the artist's biography, but thinking about the Anthropocene. So that's what it's all about. Thank you.